Oh, there it is.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, folks. Hello, Sandy. How are you? Hi, Dolores. Great to see you both.
Yeah, hi, Sandy. Hi, Dolores.
We will do our usual thing, which means sharing for a little bit of time, for a few minutes. So we get a few Facebook people around here. I forgot the promo on my Facebook page tonight. I should certainly have done that. Hello, Dolores. Let's see, is this the right page? Yeah.
Hi, Kay.
Kind of what I thought. Hello, Kay. Hope everybody's doing well tonight. That you're bearing up under the cold, if it's cold where you are. It's been a little uncharacteristically cold here lately. In subtropical DC. Not quite, not really subtropical, is it? So, Lisa, how's the weather in Pittsburgh today?
Not as bad as one would think. It was a heck of a lot colder over the weekend. I don't want to call it balmy, but compared to how cold it was this weekend, I'd say it is. It's probably in the low 40s, maybe mid 40s.
That's pretty good.
Not so bad considering.
How was the wind?
None.
That's why it felt a little balmy.
Yeah, because the wind was kicking up on the weekend. It was pretty.
I know it was pretty wicked.
Wasn't a lot of fun. Oh, goodness. I feel like I've been going all day.
You have been going all day.
We have. We've been going all day.
Yep.
It's been a good day, though.
Has it? Good.
Yeah, it's been a really good day, I think. Lots of work. But it seems like every time I sit down with someone, I end up with, hours of work, and I've got hours of work to do. And it's like, when are you going to get all this done, kiddo? Yeah.
I wonder about that myself.
Yeah, I've got too many irons in the fire. When you have too many irons in the fire, sometimes it's hard to have fun. And then it starts feeling like work, right?
There's too much stress.
Mm-hmm. And too many people you don't want to let down, and yeah.
Yeah, the stress enters your life.
Yeah. It is, Laura. It is. That's the one.
Hey, Laura.
She's saying, "Is this the one you wore to the Connor Lamb Town Hall?" And I'm like, "Yes, yes, it is." I never sent you that article, did I, Joe? I need to send it to you.
No, you never did send me.
I know. See, this is where the stress comes in, right? Not doing what you said you were going to do. Yeah, that's the one where, yes, we were at the town hall. Laura's reminding me, and I walked in. There were like 70 people there, and we had a big part in getting them there. And somebody said, "Oh, the Red Berets are here." Like they knew. It was really good. That was before I met Laura, actually. I think. Is that right before I met you? I think it was right before, Laura. I think we went to Texas that same year. Maybe I think. Anyway.
Said, "Oh, the Red Berets are here."
Oh yeah, and it wasn't like, oh, the red berets are here. It was, oh, the red berets are here. It was fun. Oh
I'll
goodness.
bet it was. Hey, Laura, how you feeling today? Okay, I hope you're feeling real good. And Sandy says, hi, Lisa.
Hi, Sandy.
And Laura says, yeah, it was with dread.
You know, it's terrible when you're on Zoom calls with like the people you love the most and you don't even have time to say, hey, how you doing? Which I did just now with Laura.
This isn't a Zoom call.
I know, this is a broadcast. I can be a little freer.
Yeah, we can do whatever we want because it's a broadcast. Sandy says, finally got Joe back on my TV. How'd you get me back on your TV?
Oh, maybe she's got YouTube. Yeah, because I've got a Fire Stick. So if I wanted to, I could pull this up on my TV.
Yeah, actually, we do that all the time. Okay, because we're on YouTube the whole day. We just stay on YouTube.
Boy, that would be easy.
And we pull up stream after stream after stream. And then when we get tired of the stuff, we do some classical music.
Sounds nice.
And then sometimes we even get to some folk music.
Yes, Laura, mass care.
Mass care, yeah, not really so much mass care as mass care numbers. I think you'll find them very, very familiar because
With a couple of little twists, though, right, Joe?
A couple of little twists,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, a couple of little twists. Yeah, one thing I noticed. Did you notice that long-term care, okay, is part of the Massachusetts plan?
Yes.
And not yet part of the Washington plan?
That I did not realize. I get now that you say it, I think, yeah, okay, I don't think it came up. But yes, I did notice that. But there was a couple of things that are in this analysis that I didn't quite understand. And I have to remind myself that I've been out of the healthcare industry from the standpoint of new regulation for 3 years now. But he was talking about whether or not he would be able to get federal funding, and he said something about not getting it, or health. They were talking about home health and it not being funded, which home health used to be a Medicare designated and benefit, and I'm wondering now if, because I'm connecting the dots of some of the things that I've heard, I'm wondering if they changed the home health benefit in CMS. I have to look that up.
I don't know if they did that yet, but there's something about some things that was supposed to be in the Build Back Better Act that are maybe getting cut back at this point or on the block or whatever. That seems very much at sea in terms of what's going to be in the final bill still.
Well, you know how they keep talking about Medicare Advantage and how there's upcoding, which Medicare Advantage is garbage. But home health, they have to get all of your conditions documented because they're treating you. You need what used to be in hospital or in a skilled nursing facility treatment that they're doing at home. And they're sending people home more and more ill. Home health comes in to treat you while you're in your home. And if they don't,
still ill,
very ill, sometimes, 6 hours post-op, they're sending you home, right? And if they don't get all of that information about all of the things that they need to be aware of to treat you down on paper, then, they don't know. They wouldn't know, oh, this individual's diabetic, right? I need to be very careful with this wound because this individual is diabetic. There's going to be a slower healing process. There's different complications that could come up with that. Oh, this person's got a history of depression or a million things, right? they have to do a thorough assessment and put all of that down. Okay. That's not upcoding. That's good care. So I'm concerned about that narrative. But since that narrative is out there, I'm wondering if they change the benefit for home health that would have come out in the October release of the final bill from the Federal Registry. Because I'm wondering if this is the justification for why they shut down home health. And how are you going to get it if that's what's happened? So I've got some homework to do there.
Okay, I haven't heard anything about their shutting down home health.
Well, changing the Medicare benefit of home health is what I'm wondering. How's that going to get funded? Are they going to now include that somewhere else, or how's that working?
Yeah, I don't know if the funding has to be in the bill. I know that the CBO score on the Build Back Better Act, the current version, okay, the Build Back Better Act, shows a deficit over 10 years of 250 billion or something like that. So it's not completely paid for, as Biden said, it was going to be. Okay, so when I saw that, I said to myself, thank God there's a deficit.
Yeah.
It's not completely paid for. If it were completely paid for, it would be it would be bad news. It would be coming out of somebody's pocket.
Right.
So I thought it was nice that it was not completely paid for. Of course, it's not enough of a deficit, only $25 billion a year. They needed much more deficit spending with respect to that. So let's get to the analysis. Before we get to Massachusetts, though, let's go back to good old Washington and see what the pattern is there for Washington. So let me share Gerald Friedman's analysis, the most current analysis for Washington, which actually was finalized sometime in June, but for some reason it was held very, very close. And we really did not get it.
Well, but we got through it. We got it. We got through it. You went through it. It was, and then you explained it to me in depth, and then we did it. We went over it.
And we went over it, yeah, but I was constantly trying to get a hold of the final version, and I only got that about a month ago. And it turned out it was finalized sometime in June. So the delay was hard to understand. The reason for the delay, it wasn't at Jerry Friedman's end, it was at the whole Washington end. Okay, but anyway, I just want to go over a few of the tables so people understand what the pattern is. Here's table 1. Okay, this is in Washington. Okay, it's a projection for 2021, which we're almost finished with, of course, so this projection is going to be dated very, very shortly. But he first shows spending if you assume universal coverage under the existing system. Okay. And so he gives a total for personal health care, the way that is currently used. Then he projects the cost for improved access. In other words, if under the present system there were improved access, how much would it cost? And then that gives you a total for total personal health care. Then he tacks on the projected cost of administration if there were universal coverage with the existing system. And then that gives you a total of $97,992 million. The 78,440 at the bottom is just carrying down what's actually being spent under the current system for personal health care. The same 78,440 that's up there in the first line. So then he wants to present what would be the situation if we had single payer.
Right.
What would be the savings from the existing system? So he presents the savings in each category: hospital price adjustment, physician price adjustment, drug and device pricing, and provider administration. Then he makes a Medicaid price adjustment. That's the only figure that's not a minus here, where there's no savings. And the reason why it's not is because under the Medicaid program at present, the fees for doctors are subpar, which is why a lot of doctors will not provide any service under Medicaid. Okay, but under the change that's envisioned for a single payer system, there would be a price adjustment for Medicaid patients because the same amount of money would be going for them as for everybody else. So this was going to make a difference of $3.6 billion. Okay, that would be added rather than subtracted from.
Right, because they're leveling. They're going to reimburse the same amounts of money, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so insurance administration, then there were going to be big savings. Okay, from insurance administration, more than $9 billion. Second biggest category of savings under it. Then there were going to be savings also from fraud, because it would be easier to detect any fraud in the new system. And so total savings were $32,304,000,000. Okay, that was actually projected savings. Now, when you look at that as a percentage of the total of $97,992,000,000, it turns out to be 33%. So he's projecting that the savings that would be realized from going to single payer would be $33 billion. Very substantial savings. So then he looks at how the Washington Trust, whole Washington, how that would be funded. Actually, the Washington Healthcare Trust, I guess, was going to be the final name of it. Okay, so the net spending, had there been the single payer system in place, was going to be $65,688,000,000. But if you included Medicare Part B as part of the system, then it was going to be more expensive, costing $67,173,000,000. And the existing revenue, which we'll explain in a little more detail, okay, in just a little while, that revenue they could tap to support the program. The existing revenue, in other words, from external sources, was estimated at $46.7 billion. So, of course, you take the $67 billion, you subtract the $46.7 billion from it, and the revenue that whole Washington, that the state was going to have to make up to make this happen, was going to be roughly $20.5 billion. So that was the initial pattern of what kinds of savings one would have, what kinds of spending would be done under the program, and the gap that had to be made up through state taxes of some kind, or the state anyway raising money to support it. So now I want to switch to Table 1 in Massachusetts. This is the projected cost of healthcare for Massachusetts, 2021. I should say at this point also that Population of Washington is something like 7,700,000 people, I think. I think I'm pretty close there. In Massachusetts, total population just passed 7 million people. It's just a
Oh my
little bit.
gosh, Massachusetts have fewer.
Massachusetts has fewer than Washington, but it's not too different in terms of total population.
Right. Same ballpark.
Yeah, so that's kind of interesting because if you recall, well, as we go through the figures, so personal health care under the current system, okay, if we utilize the current system, was projected for 2021 at $91,769,000,000.
Wait a second, Joe. I don't think your screen is showing where you're at.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. I had been sharing the Washington screen, I guess, so let me see where I am. Okay, let me go back. Yeah, that's why. So I got to stop the screen sharing here. So this is going to be
And redo it.
a little more complicated than I thought because we'll be constantly going back between the two screens. But that's all right. That'll work.
You can't do a split screen on your computer, but I guess you probably need two screens to be able to do it that way.
Yeah, I've never tried it in StreamYard.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure what I can do in StreamYard. Okay, but to go back to where we were, so you'll notice that under the present system, the estimate for personal health care was $91,769,000,000. So then, of course, he had to factor in a projection for improved access, which was going to bring the total up to $97,739,000,000. And notice how these figures are similar to the Washington figures, but not exactly the same. Then he had to factor in the cost of insurance administration. That brought the total existing system with full access bill up to $109 billion if the present system were delivering coverage to everybody. In other words, assuming that it was giving coverage to everybody. So that $109 billion, that compares to the $97 billion for Washington. So that's an interesting statistic because Washington has a population of about 7.7 billion, and Massachusetts has a population of just over 7 million.
Yes, and
So in other words, the current Washington system, even though it's the existing system and it's a mess, okay, and everything else, it costs less than the Massachusetts system, which I found to be kind of interesting.
Well, but hold on. Just let's put this on the table. Massachusetts has some of the best healthcare system or hospitals and whatnot going, right?
I know, and they're very expensive.
Exactly. So that's part of it, Joe. That's part of it. Not to say that they don't have good healthcare in Washington State, but let's just be real. Washington State's got 1 million more people than Massachusetts, and yet Massachusetts is costing more.
Yes, it's costing more. That's probably the cost of the Partners healthcare system in the Boston area.
Well, that's part of it, right? Because you've got different stuff going on. Although you have to remember too, Joe, that you have incredibly wealthy people, concentrated in Washington, and they've got a lot of money sitting out in Washington. So, I think it is definitely a function of some of the best healthcare in the world sitting in Massachusetts, and the cost of that healthcare because of the situation that has been brought about that we were talking about earlier, where, there are no price constraints, there
Yeah,
are no wage constraints that were written into the ACA when it was put together.
yeah, the
So,
APA was just total travesty.
so there is no way to control that because it was intentionally set up not to,
Yes,
right?
it was intentionally set up as a bailout for the insurance companies and the
Mhm.
providers. So we get to.
Although, hold on, real quick. Did you notice that Jerry Friedman had an interesting take on that?
I did not notice, but what was his take on that?
Well, Jerry looks at this as pitting the or empowering the insurance industry against the providers, which I know that every region and every state isn't set up the same way. However, the ACA allowed the vertical integration of healthcare delivery, which
Yes,
is not taken into consideration in the way that he writes his narrative, which is just a different take. It's just a different take, right? But it was interesting because I love reading and understanding that different people who know a lot about this stuff have different perspectives, right?
yeah, right. But I think he was probably focusing a lot on the Medicare Advantage program and his perceptions of the Medicare Advantage program and his view that the Medicare Advantage program is looting Medicare.
But yes, and that's, I mean, it's neither here nor there. Let's keep going with this analysis here.
Yeah, right. So he then goes into the savings from the existing system that could be expected if you had a single payer system in place. He goes through hospital price adjustments, very similar to what you saw, okay, in Washington, about $11.6 billion. Physician price adjustment, drug and device pricing, same categories as he used, okay, in Washington. There's a Medicaid price adjustment there, and again, that is not a savings. It actually adds to costs, and it does so because they're leveling the payments to the providers, okay, because there's no longer a separate Medicaid program. Okay, the Medicaid people are being integrated into the same program, okay, as everybody else, and the doctors who serve them, okay, and other providers that serve them, okay, are getting the same fees, okay, as everybody else, which is really one great thing because it means that there'll be a lot less hesitation in taking poor people on because you'll be able to make as much money on the poor people as you can on others, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then there's insurance administration, what would be saved there? And again, that's the second biggest category of savings, close to $10 billion in this context. And then you've got, again, fraud savings of $1.5 billion. So what are total savings? They're $36 billion on the $109 billion total. When you compute the percentage of those two things, they're nearly identical,
Mm-hmm.
showing that Jerry was using the same model.
Consistent model, yes. Same assertions and assumptions. Yep.
Yes, a consistent model, and almost exactly 33% of the savings.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was interesting. For the funding of the Massachusetts Trust, he looks at what would be the net spending, okay, for Medicare for All in Massachusetts. That would be 73 billion, but not including Medicare Part B. That corresponds to 65 billion, okay, in Washington, okay, if you recall that figure. Okay, but then when Medicare Part B is included, that goes up to 75 billion here and roughly 67 billion, okay. In
Okay, we have an announcement. I have to break in here. Robert Kaplan is saying that I live in Sacramento, California, and our city council just passed a resolution a few minutes ago to support CalCare and Medicare for all. Come on, take the win, guys. We need them when we can get them. Woo!
Yeah, we love that. We love that.
Okay.
Okay, so notice one big difference that immediately strikes one. In Washington, the existing revenue that could be tapped in order to support this from external sources was 46.686, if I recall correctly. In other words, $46.7 billion.
What, from total savings in Washington?
No, not from total savings. That's the existing revenue line down here.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry.
Okay, so that's 46.7. This is 55.7. In other words, they're on a proportional basis. There seems to be more existing revenue available in Massachusetts for some reason. 46.7 versus 55.7. Okay, that's a difference of $9 billion in the available existing revenue. So the needed revenue that Massachusetts has to come up with
is less than Washington.
Washington, it's 20.5 billion. Here, it's 19.2 billion. Because for some reason, the existing revenue is more in Massachusetts than it was for Washington. So I thought that was interesting, okay, to note that, and we'll be looking about why that happens, okay, and how that happens. So it looks like the table's a bit different too, but so I think we'll come back to this screen a little later, go back to Washington and watch that. I hope this isn't too dull for you. I myself find these kinds of comparisons to be very fascinating.
Oh, Laura, I don't know. I'd have to go back and noodle it. I'm trying to remember, but yeah, I was thinking about that. I'm not sure. It may be because the administrative costs that would be saved are exceptional, but I'm not sure. But yeah, I was wondering if it had something to do with the fact that there is no income tax and the way that your taxes are structured, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to go into that and try to figure out why it's so different.
I'll do that. I'll look at that tonight because I was really interested in the details. I kept going back and reading the details so often I didn't get through the whole darn analysis. But anyhow.
Right. So that table kind of finishes there. So the table is actually a little different for Washington, okay, as opposed to Massachusetts. Here, Jerry goes into table 2, existing revenue sources, okay, that were projected for 2021.
Are you in Washington now, or are you still in MassCare?
I'm back in Washington now.
Okay,
on that table 2. Okay, so there they expect to get the available revenue from Medicare, and that was projected at 17.2 billion.
Joe?
Yes.
I've got a part of it. Your Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement has something called a market basket multiplier on it, and then you've got a delta that's added to that based on how much it costs to obtain health care in your locality. And we've already said that the cost of health care in Michigan or in Massachusetts
is higher.
Is the highest in the country. So their reimbursement rate that they're getting from Medicare and Medicaid is higher, much higher, I'm sure, than Washington. because I was out there, I looked at those reimbursement rates. They're not as high. Like you've got a base reimbursement, and just for example, like in Philadelphia, the reimbursement rate is 1.13, 113% of the standard rate. Okay. And in Pittsburgh, it runs around 90, maybe a little higher now, because remember, I've been out for 3 years and things have changed a little bit. So it's the market basket. That's part of it, Joe. They're getting more Medicare and Medicaid funding.
Right, and that's why there was the 55.7 billion as opposed to the 46.7 7 billion, okay, in Washington.
It's not all of it, but it is a good piece of it. Yeah, I'm sure.
That probably is a good piece of it.
Because your VA too. I'm not quite sure. I thought the VA would have been excluded from this.
Right.
So I don't understand why that's there. Oh no, they're
Well,
taking
he
into account
says,
everything. Okay, never
yeah,
mind.
he's taking into account everything, but
Okay.
he says both in this paper, okay, and also in the Massachusetts paper that the VA was going to take care of itself. In other words, there was no way of getting that funding from the federal government. Uh, okay, but these are the categories that he uses, okay, in both analyses to come up with a total, the 46.7 billion in Washington and the 55.7 billion in Massachusetts. So let's stop sharing this again. And let's go back to Massachusetts once more. Again, I hope you don't mind this shifting back and forth. To me, the comparison is very illuminating.
It is. It's an eye-opening thing, and it tells a lot. When you look at it and think about it, it really helps explain something.
Yes, when you have to think about the comparisons, you begin to understand the pattern of how he comes up with the final conclusions that he comes up with. So, okay, here again, the last part of this table is different for Massachusetts. Okay, what he puts in there directly at this point is how Massachusetts is going to raise the money. He has a 10% payroll tax with 20,000. The first $20,000, okay, is exempt, plus a 0.5% tax on large establishments, and a 10% tax, okay, on unearned income with the first $20,000 exempt. So this produces revenue of $25 billion, 25, almost $26 billion. Okay, very close to $26 billion.
Joe, $20,000. Is that poverty?
Oh no, it's not $20,000. It's $25 billion
No,
$898 million.
no. Exempting. Okay, a 10% payroll with 20,000. The first 20,000 exempt. That's what that
Right.
means, right?
That's what that means, right?
Per individual, per family, per individual.
Yes, per individual, yes. Okay, and then the unearned income, I guess the unearned income is probably considered to be rents and things like that.
Passive income. I wonder if it's capital gains.
Yeah, passive income. And the first $20,000 of that is exempt as well. But those two income sources total $26 billion. So it's a very simple funding plan from the state point of view, okay, what the state has to come up with. Okay, and it's a pretty good deal for the employers who are paying the 10% payroll, because I understand that healthcare, okay, in Massachusetts is averaging 22 to 23%, okay, of payroll.
Mm-hmm.
And that charge is going to go away.
So is that 10% on the companies and the individuals?
I believe it's 10% on the company here.
So there's no individual?
Well, let's look into this, okay, a little
Yeah.
more and see what we come up with. Off the top of my head, I don't remember a specific charge, okay, on individuals.
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't remember it either. And I was a little amazed, to be
right,
honest.
right, okay, it's a little bit amazing, but the other part that we want to notice here is that we have the $26 billion total, which provides a surplus. But the surplus is only $6.7 billion. I say only, but it's $6.7 billion. But we know from the previous analysis of Washington that the 2021 surplus was going to be $12.227 billion.
Right.
So
So double, basically.
considerably more proportionately, even though there was more to make up. Okay. In other words, the bill was 20.5 billion in Washington, and it's only 19.2 billion here. So not only is the surplus, okay, a larger surplus, but clearly Washington, the funding plan in Washington was raising far more money proportionately than the funding plan, okay, in Massachusetts.
Yes, it was. And the payroll tax was not as high.
It was 8.5%.
It was 8.5, yes.
Right.
But they also had what was it, 2 point something individuals as well.
Yeah, we'll go through that funding in just a moment. While we're here, though, I just wanted to go through how the 55.7 came about. There were roughly equal amounts for Medicare, okay, and Medicaid, as there were in Washington. There was a comparable VA share. There's other state but public health revenue sources that exist in Massachusetts now. And that was going to go into this plan. Then there was some remaining out-of-pocket expenses, which was still going to be around. And they were going to get some money from ACA subsidies, and then some new Medicaid monies. I'm not sure what that's about.
They must be expanding some Medicaid expansion coming in, some different program that's getting funded.
Right, but that's where the $55.7 billion that he cites was coming from. So I think that breakdown, okay, is of some interest. So let's go back now to, let's stop sharing that and go back again. And go back again to Washington.
Now, one thing I did find interesting is that they're not allowed to do progressive income taxes per their constitution, or progressive taxes through their constitution.
Yes, but that was the case in Washington too, wasn't it?
Maybe? I'm not sure.
Yes, I seem to remember that was something that was.
Washington has to make sure that they have a fair and equitable distribution of any tax. It's a little, they have to do, in other words, everybody gets a piece of the pie in Washington.
Yes, everybody gets a piece of the pie, but it's not supposed to be progressive. Okay, so there are evidently similar provisions in the two constitutions.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on to table 3. I guess I'm not going to go through this because it doesn't really reveal anything about the pattern. There's a similar table for Massachusetts, which I'm going to skip. Suffice it to say that in both states, the programs are sustainable, considerably sustainable, okay, according to the projections. Big surpluses over 10 years in both states. Here's the Washington funding plan.
Does he do this for the mass care one as well? This specific breakdown?
I didn't see this breakdown here. I think the only
Yeah, I don't
breakdown
think I
we
did
get
either.
there, the only breakdown we got there was the two sources
Okay.
I stated. So, uh, okay, the categories here are highlighted in yellow, 8.5% on payrolls paid by the employers. It's explicit, paid by the employers. 2% on payrolls, okay, that's paid by the employees. So he doesn't break that down that way for Massachusetts. So I believe that 10% on payrolls,
Mm-hmm.
that's a responsibility of the employers, and that there was nothing like that that was a responsibility for the employees.
I'd be surprised though, Joe. I bet you there's a breakdown in that 10%. I'd be really shocked that they're not taxing the individual.
Okay, let's take another look at that in just a few minutes. But there might not be another tax on the individual because remember, there's something like $9 billion as a source of revenue already coming from Massachusetts, and undoubtedly someone's being taxed for the $9 billion. So maybe they didn't have any more taxes, okay, on individuals because the individuals are paying taxes already to come up with the $9 billion.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you see all these sources here: 2% on payrolls paid by employees, 2% on income of sole proprietorships, 8.5% on capital gains income, $200 premium paid by all enrollees above age 18, and 200% of the poverty line, okay, the federal poverty line. And here's a table that pretty much covers the same ground. Now, those percentages, okay, that are given here are not part of Jerry's report. I added those percentages for my own clarity because I was interested in seeing how much of the needed revenue in Washington was actually covered by the payroll taxes, the employer payroll tax and the employee payroll tax. And if you add up the 71.3% and the 16.8%, you are at, what is it, 88.1%, I believe, just from those two sources.
Yeah.
There's almost nothing as a percentage coming from the proprietors. There's a substantial amount that's coming from the capital gains tax, okay, of 8.5%. But only a small amount, only 2.7% of total revenue that's coming from state sources is coming from premiums. So in Washington, they could have pretty much the same funding if they got rid of the sole proprietor tax and they got rid of the premiums.
Yeah, we talked about that they really don't need them per se.
Yeah, they really don't need them per se. So total revenue in Washington was going to be $32,708,000,708. That's what was going to be raised in Washington. If you recall, in Massachusetts, it was going to be roughly 25 billion some odd.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why Washington comes up with this big surplus of $12.221 billion.
There is a thought in my head, though, that Washington, it has much, it's a larger state demographically, Joe. Okay. And I don't know this for a fact, but I did live out there for a while. And I would assume that they are going to need to be able to attract providers and maybe put back in some infrastructure so that their rural people aren't traveling forever to get to care.
Yes, I'm sure that's true. And we also know from rumblings that we get from the whole Washington people that if everything goes according to plan and the surpluses are as large as they appear to, as the projections here, that within a few years they will be in good enough shape from a fiscal point of view to add long-term care.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but it's wonderful though that the whole Washington plan has the kind of surplus as it does and still saves so much money because I believe that they are, I think that there's going to be more surprises than people think when you try and change the healthcare system. We know what the mergers and acquisitions have done. We know how limited access is, and the more territory you've got to cover, the more of a situation where you're going to have to rebolster your infrastructure.
Absolutely. That's absolutely true. So let's stop sharing this again and go back to Massachusetts and see what the situation is there.
Okay, I got to shout this out now. Go start. What are you talking about? You have my attention. He says that the Maxwell trial just started and C-suite execs are dropping like flies. Dropping how? Dropping how, Go start. I missed it. I was busy all day. I forgot it was even happening. I was
Okay.
probably not been listening.
Okay, so Go Start will tell us about that, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Um,
totally inappropriate.
as we go forward. Uh, okay, so I should be sharing Gerald Friedman's Massachusetts paper now, am I?
Yeah, you
Okay,
are.
okay. So I said I wasn't going to say anything about this table three, the 10-year projections,
Mm-hmm.
but it's worthwhile just noticing the scale of these. Uh, there are pretty big surpluses involved here, too. And so the state of Massachusetts is not going to, it won't have the size surpluses, okay, that exist, okay, in Washington. But based on his paper, it would be true that the Massachusetts Healthcare Trust would be covering long-term care from the start.
Oh, that's right.
So even though the
That's right.
surpluses are smaller, they're still very substantial considering that long-term care is part of this. The revenue sources for Massachusetts personal income in Table 4. Maybe this will go some way to explain the earlier. Okay, let me go back a little and look at this. The earlier thing here. This is a 10% payroll with 20,000 exempt plus 0.5% on large establishments. 10%, 10% of the unearned income with $20,000 exempt. Total revenue of $25.8 billion. Okay, now let's look at this other breakdown here. Revenue sources for Massachusetts personal income. So this is, okay, in millions of dollars. Personal income, 556,789,000. Wages and salaries, 304,190,000. These are BEA statistics for that. And dividends, interest, rents, and profits, 164 million. AGI, adjusted gross income, that's 393 million. I guess that's what's coming from Massachusetts personal income taxes. And taxes on wages and salary, 258,912,000. Taxes on non-wage income, 107,015,000. With the 20,000 exemption, including establishment deduction, the wages and salaries would come to 171,632,000, and the non-wage income 81,627,000. So I don't know how that fits into the other estimate. I'm going to have to dig more deeply and find that out. That must be some sort of breakdown that's relevant to the earlier figures that we see here, the 10% payroll with 20,000 exempt, and the 10% of unearned income, 8.163 billion, giving us the total of 25,898,000,000. So I'll have to find out how Table 4 relates to that. It's not obvious to me how that relates to that at this point. Okay, so the 10-year funding program based on projected spending. Okay, there's the surplus we saw for 2021, 6.687. And you can see as the years go by, that surplus gets larger, so that over the 10 years, it gets to be a pretty impressive surplus by 2030. In other words, to get to the total surplus, you have to add up the surplus for each year. So you're looking at what, 30 billion, another 26 billion, that's 56 billion, another 21 million. That's about 77 billion, another 17 billion. We're up to 94 billion. So we're about $110 billion surplus over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about a very fiscally sustainable program.
Indeed.
Very fiscally sustainable.
And we have to also point out that, Jerry's conservative in these things too. He doesn't go overboard in his estimates.
Yeah, that is true, okay, of Jerry. In fact, I would argue in some other contexts, like in doing Bernie's funding plan,
Mm-hmm.
that he was probably too conservative about what could be done in that instance. But the point here is that he's a careful economist. He always wants to be able to say that his work was based on conservative assumptions. And we see that here too. And in spite of the conservative assumptions, there are huge surpluses, both in Massachusetts and in Washington.
So we're 2 for 2 here, Joe, in the sense that the battle cry of states won't be able to sustain a downturn if they try and do this is, I'm going to be nice here and say, hogwash.
There's good reason to believe it's hogwash.
Yeah, very good reason, right? To the tune of $78 billion. I mean, come on.
I mean, well, for Massachusetts, it's $107 billion surplus over 10 years. And for Washington, it's even greater. The
Oh yeah,
Washington
it's even
numbers
more.
year by year were big, 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 big.
Yeah,
I didn't even
huge,
try to add them up. They must be $150 billion over 10 years.
which is a good thing. I mean, really, really, Joe. I mean, when you think about this, because I don't know that everybody would agree with me, but I am a fervent believer of the infrastructure that a state is going to need in rebuilding their public health services, that public health system, the trust of the public. There, that's going to be more than just let's do it behind the scenes. You're going to need money to put that together. That might be, compensation for work hours and committees that have to be put together and execution, and maybe some socialization and advertising around it, right? We're going to need that money. I believe that. I
Yes,
really
I
do.
believe that too. And I believe that uh, having programs that are so obviously sustainable
Mm-hmm.
uh, is very good for state based programs.
I'll tell you, anybody who is, wanting cold, hard, fast numbers, both of these analyses, considering that the two states are on opposite sides of the country, right? One state had this done earlier, then Massachusetts came in and had Jerry do their analysis. I love the fact that they're both telling the same story.
They're
We
telling
can do
roughly
this.
the same story, and also the part about where the state's portion of the funding is coming from,
Mm-hmm.
specifically from payroll taxes, is consistent, okay, in both cases.
Well, the delta that they have to make up, but we've got to also, I think it's important that we state that the bulk of some of this funding is coming from federal dollars,
They're
federal
coming
programs.
from federal dollars because the states are able to tie into the federal dollars by using current law.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. And so instead of your Medicaid and Medicare dollars being underwritten for things like for profit insurance, rip me off and keep me from my care health insurance plan, those very same dollars are coming into your state and everybody's got the same care. It's all going to be really good care and
Going to be
price.
very good care, and of course, it's equal across the social classes. Where
Exactly.
individuals are going to make use of the single payer program. It will be the same single payer program for everybody, and there'll be a level of equality in that we do not see now.
And
So
you know what else
it's
there's not going to
a
be in
very,
there,
very
Joe?
good story.
You're not going to have, you know, $16 million a year salaries for your CEOs and then another $30 million bonus annually. You're not going to see those ads of competing healthcare conglomerate giants on your TV every 5 seconds. Imagine just
Yeah,
alone
that's
the
true. Okay,
advertising budgets.
Jerry made the point here that the head of CMS,
Mm-hmm.
the
Makes
federal government,
250.
250,000 per year. Okay, and the average compensation for what did he say? The 8 major health insurers.
C-suite employees, yeah.
Yeah, the average compensation for
I think,
them was 16 million a year.
yeah, and that doesn't even include bonuses. That's just their regular salary. They make, what did he say? They make more in a week than the CMS employees make in a day or make in a year?
Not just the CMS employee, the
The
director
head.
of CMS, the
The
head of
head.
CMS, only makes $250,000.
Yep. Yep.
That's really incredible. And so that's uh, it's because those salaries are being paid out. Those salaries are coming off our backs.
Yeah, they are.
And the measure of the greater efficiency of the federal government, of course, is reflected in the salaries. That federal
Well,
salaries can only go so high.
I would like to point out something that he points out in one of these pages that you're coming up on. Uh, it costs the federal government 2% to process claims.
Right, right, right,
And it's costing now like 24% for your private industries to process.
right. And that's why we're seeing these huge savings for single payer in both places.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the importance, though, of the focus on the payroll tax as the funding mechanism for the states, either paid by employers, okay, or employees to some degree,
Or both, yeah.
is that those payroll taxes are not an added burden for the people involved, because when you look at the net burden, in other words, what things they pay for now have gone away, and then you add those
Their
payroll.
out-of-pocket expense is more than halved. More
Yeah,
than halved. Cut in
yeah,
half.
yes, more than cut in half. Okay, in both instances, so that trade-off becomes a very popular trade-off for people, and the payroll taxes are a very solid basis for revenue year by year, because even in a serious recession, uh, 90 to 95% of those payroll taxes are still there.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean there is no argument here, at least in these two plans, that they will absolutely be able to survive and thrive in an economic downturn.
Right. And one point, again, to go back to this very, very important point, when it comes down to the needed revenue that each state, okay, is going to need to make up the gap between the existing revenue and the total revenue that's going to have to be spent, if you try to close that gap with payroll taxes, that trade-off is going to be very good for people who are being charged the payroll taxes. And
And
it's also going to have a solid base in the economics of the situation. So it's going to be sustainable over a period of time.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, the more that we dig into this, the more, I mean, imagine you're getting charged exorbitant premiums. You can't afford, or you're terrified to go to the doctor, and your money is being spent on advertising, on exorbitant salaries, on exorbitant rents and leases, and just all this stuff. And then they have the nerve not to give you health care.
You're right. And in the Massachusetts plan, there's no premium.
Yeah.
There are no premiums in this Massachusetts plan.
Yeah.
And not even the nuisance premiums that exist in the Washington plan. So, I mean, I think the finances work out very, very well. They're a wonderful trade-off for everybody in both of these states.
Oh
Now,
my gosh. Oh my, I'm sorry. I'm reading Ghost Start. He's listing the CEOs that are going under. You got to go to the comment, Joe.
okay, I'll go to comments. It's
I
time.
mean, it's so titillating. You got to read it.
Okay, I will read it in just a second, but I do want to make this final point.
Okay.
Between the Massachusetts model, okay, and the Washington state model, we have two very good models for other states to look at, okay, and to learn from.
Yes.
And if either of these models are replicated by other states,
And if we have our way, they will be.
most of those states are going to have fiscally sustainable single payer healthcare plans that cover everybody.
Okay. Where's our cheering section? Everybody gone so quiet. Nobody's even making comments.
Yes, there should certainly be a cheering section.
Well, anyway, I'm an old cheerleader, so whatever. I guess I guess we kind of geeked out on that one, Joe. I don't know.
Now, you think think we geeked out on that? Yeah.
I think we did. I think people were kind of bored, maybe. I don't know. But look at what Ghost Start posts at 10:09, because he had originally said that there were CEOs dropping like flies. Remember when I asked him who?
Yeah. And then he said the Twitter CEO,
Jack, who just resigned yesterday or whatever.
Jack Dorsey, just resigned, and you think that he resigned as a result of the Maxwell trial?
Well, that's kind of what Ghost Start's saying. I have been out of the loop and have not paid attention today, but now I'm going to go look.
Paying attention also. But Facebook's CNBC crypto exec, Telecom Italia CEO, Peaceful Living CEO, President, CEO of Leo Pharma, Murphy resigns House seat.
House seat? Oh my gosh.
Which Murphy?
Just secretary? Yeah, which Murphy?
Which Murphy resigned the House seat?
Boy, we've been out of it today, Joe.
I hope it wasn't Patrick Murphy. The DHHS.
Department of Health and Human Services Secretary. I don't know who that is either off the top of my head.
That's Xavier Becerra.
Becerra?
Oh. Yeah, Becerra is Health and Human Services.
Oh, my God.
Is he really stepping down?
Well, I don't think Ghost Start would make this up, Joe. It's pretty heavy stuff.
I don't think he would make this up, but I'm just
flabbergasted.
That, okay, if Xavier Becerra is stepping down, that is not good news, because he was one of the relatively progressive people, and he was sitting on top of the director of CMS, who in turn was sitting on top of the director of CMMI, Liz Fowler.
Yeah, but what do they do? So what? They weren't doing anything with her. I mean, okay, maybe he was more progressive. Woohoo!
The contracting program, though, did come to a halt. You know, it was being reevaluated. And now pressure is coming from some of the interest groups calling for stopping the DCA program completely.
DCEs, yeah. Yeah, oversight committee asked for that.
Yeah. That is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really interesting. But why would Becerra get involved in that bullshit? I don't understand these people. I don't understand their motivation.
Oh, Joe, you're so sweet. You're so innocent.
I really don't think I'm innocent, but
I think you are. Sandy says he was a little too progressive in the wrong way.
Yeah, he was progressive in the wrong way. All right. Okay, so actually this...
Oh, okay, he's saying DHSS Secretary Dr. Mandy Cohen, sorry, led the NC COVID response. Oh, well, that might not have anything to do with
Xavier Becerra, right? It may not have anything to do with it.
Oh, maybe this is in addition to Becerra. I don't know.
Yeah, some groups.
We got to go find it. We got to go read the New York Times or something, or the Post.
If we're real curious about that, I'll just see if Common Dreams has anything.
No, you got to go to the Post. You got to go to Washington with that one. Where's the trial? Is it in New York?
I don't know if it's in New York.
I think it's the Southern District of New York, but I'm not positive. Which means that the Times will have it. Yeah, it is. It's the Southern District of New York, Joe. And if you'll excuse me, I'll be back in a minute.
I will excuse you.
Yeah, people won't have to listen to me talk. Hey, sweetheart.
Democrats are losing control of the narrative. When did they have control of the narrative? I'm looking at headlines in the Common Dreams today. Okay, I don't have that latest news. Maybe Ghost Start will be kind enough to provide a link. Sandy says, I saw the articles today, but didn't read them. It was a little too progressive in the long way. DHHS Secretary Dr. Mandy Cohn led the NC COVID response. All in the last 24 hours. Perverts don't need motivation. Okay, says Becerra was called on to expand Medicare at the protest today. Lana says, I hate the New York Times because it's behind a paywall. I'll tell you something, Lana. I also hate the New York Times because it's behind a paywall. I studiously refuse to read it, wait for the news to appear in other sources because it's behind a paywall. And Layla Charles Lay says, they keep blaming the narrative. Laugh my ass off. Yeah, they never blame what they do. They always blame the narrative. We got to change the narrative. We can keep doing the same bullshit, but we got to change the narrative. That's what it's about. We just got to change how we lie to the people, and then everything will be all right. C-suite executives are dropping like flies. Well, I suppose that's really big news. But for me, what is really big news is these two state plans. They look really, really, really good. You and Lisa believe both are viable. They're extremely viable. And they contain the key to viability in other states too. Instead of looking for exotic sources of revenue to fund something like this, you just go back to payroll taxes. And it works because the trade-offs are good for people and good for businesses. I mean, that's what I'm learning from the two examples. I think that can be replicated in state after state. Gostot says, Al Schmidt resigns as city commissioner, not necessarily connected to Maxwell, just happened in the last 24 hours. And Sandy Degg says he probably is. And Lana says, would you compare Minnesota to, has Jerry done a study, of Minnesota, or would we have to do that ourselves? With the other two studies under his belt, it would probably take Jerry 5 days to do a Minnesota study. Because he knows exactly where to go for the data. Okay, I think we got to get a hold of Kip Sullivan and see what bills are being introduced into Minnesota. I would like to find out what is going on in Minnesota. I really would. And Lana points out that tomorrow is going to be another Dump the Incumbent show, and Ramona Masacci is coming on for the first time as my co-host for Dump the Incumbents. No, it's not normally going to be Saturday. Normally, it's going to be on Wednesday. I started it on Saturday because I thought it would work for me to do it on Saturday nights. But it doesn't work actually for Ramona, so that's when I changed it to Wednesday. So the normal night for dump the incumbents is going to be on Wednesday nights. So it will be tomorrow night. And I'll be very happy if you come to that because I think that's going to be a good show. What we're going to undertake on that show is we're taking on all the objections to dump the incumbents that we've heard about thus far. Will be discussed in broad outline tomorrow night. Of course, the way the show will proceed over time is that we will be amplifying all the advantages going into them in much more detail and all the disadvantages going into them and the objections, okay, in much more detail. And we'll be bringing in data also from candidates all across the country, data about who's taking money, who's not taking money, and the kinds of things that are being offered by the people who are going to be running in primaries, okay, and in the general who are not taking money, because we want people to get familiar with their names. So there's going to be a real positive side to this show, as well as simply just the idea of dumping the incumbents. So that's going to be there. That's going to be important. But I think the positive side is going to be very important. Does anyone have Jerry F's contact info? I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but Jerry F is a professor at the University of Massachusetts, okay, in Amherst. So I think it should be pretty easy to, oh, here it is. Professor of economics at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and his email, okay, is right there. So there's that, the contact information. And that may be his Twitter address, his Twitter address just below it as well. I will look at that on Twitter and see whether that is his Twitter address. We will find out. He doesn't have a phone number here, but it should be very easy to get one from the university.
Yeah, I know that Jerry does the reviews of the plans, but I know that he doesn't do them for free. So it depends on how much funding they have to hire someone to do it. But, he should be the gold standard. He should, standardization in analysis on these plans is going to be huge and crucial. If we don't have some sort of standardization there, I think it's going to be much harder to go apples to apples and look at these plans in their variation, right? So that's something else that we're going to try and work to push from a standardization process.
Yeah, so Go Start quotes a little later. He says, direct contracting effectively eliminates the more cost-effective traditional Medicare program designed to ensure that people with complex health conditions get the care they need. And that's a quote from a Common Dreams article, which is current, okay, in Common Dreams. The title of that article, which I haven't had a chance to read yet, is, let me scroll down to it. Congress asleep at the switch as Biden continues Trump-era ploy to privatize Medicare. That's the title of the article. And there is Becerra right there. It's a Jake Johnson article, November 30th. Trump-era pirate program could result in the complete privatization of traditional Medicare in a matter of years. Is moving ahead under the Biden administration, a development that, despite its potentially massive implications for patients across the United States, has received scant attention from the national press or Congress. The person behind that right now is Liz Fowler. She's the person who did such damage to us in the passage of the Affordable Care Act. In a phone interview with Common Dreams ahead of Tuesday's demonstration at HHS headquarters, Dr. Ed Weisbart, chair of the Missouri chapter of the Physicians for National Health Program, said Congress is largely asleep at the switch as Wall Street-backed startups and private insurance giants close in on traditional Medicare, a 56-year-old program that covers tens of millions of U.S. seniors, as if they had to say that. Most people in Congress don't know that it's happening. We started having some of these conversations with congressional staff. We're hoping to have many more of them next week when we're there, but it's not on their radar either. That's the disturbing part, how radical the transformation of Medicare is becoming under this new model, how widespread it will be. It'll be the entire book of business, and yet that's occurring with neither the awareness nor consent of Congress. The program was established by the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation, CMMI, during the waning months of the Trump administration, which included former pharmaceutical industry executives, Wall Street bankers, and right-wing policy consultants notorious for gashing public health programs. Under the DC model, that's a direct contracting model, so-called direct contracting entities are paid monthly by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to cover a specified portion of a patient's medical care. The significant shift from Medicare's direct reimbursement of providers. But DCs are allowed to pocket the funding they don't spend on care, an arrangement that critics believe will incentivize the middlemen to skimp on Medicare patients, many of whom could be auto-enrolled into DCEs without their knowledge or permission. There was a policy brief released by PNHP about this. A link is given to the policy brief there. Virtually any company can apply to be a DCE, including investor-backed startups that include primary care physicians, Medicare Advantage plans, and other commercial insurers. Also, accountable care organizations or ACO-like organizations and for-profit hospital systems. So you have to ask the question, why can't state health trusts apply to be DCEs as well? If states were to do that, they could drive the other DCEs out of business, because they'd be able to provide services without actually looting Medicare.
You're preaching my mantra, Joe. Rules cut both ways. They're at least a double-edged sword. You learn the rules of the game, then you play them better than everybody else. Albert Einstein. I love that saying. It's so true.
Oh, is that what Albert Einstein said?
Yes, he did.
Gee, I don't know if I can square that with the God does not play dice with the universe.
Did Albert Einstein say that?
He did. He did say.
I don't know about that. You don't know where he was coming from, but
he was attacking quantum theory. On quantum theory, God does not play dice with the universe. And so said the atheist Albert Einstein. The DC experiment was launched by the Trump administration, but actually has its roots in the Affordable Care Act, which established CMMI with the stated goal of identifying ways to improve healthcare quality and reduce costs in the Medicare, Medicaid, and children's health insurance program.
Yeah, by doing cost sharing, which ultimately denies you more care.
Right.
It's not the right plan of attack. It's garbage. That woman is garbage.
And the Common Dreams article says CMMI is currently headed by Elizabeth Fowler.
Garbage.
Who served as Vice President of Public Policy and external affairs for WellPoint Inc., a health insurance giant that later uh, became the Anthem Company.
Mm.
Fowler also worked as chief health counsel to former Senate Finance Committee Chair Max Baucus, a right-wing Democrat who infamously had single-payer proponents arrested in 2009. That was the eight, who got arrested. And you know who two of the eight were?
Who?
Margaret Flowers and Kevin Zeese.
Mm.
And so Baucus helped ensure that ACA did not include a public option. He did worse than that. He saw to it that Obama torpedoed H.R. 676. Of course, he didn't have to say much to Obama to get him to do that.
I mean, I understand that people think that we can amend the ACA, but the truth of the matter is you can't. The ACA was written for and by the lobby. It gave healthcare to the insurance companies. And there, anybody who wants to argue that, I will do an open live debate with you and I will bear you.
Yes, in fact, on our Thursday program,
We're going to do that.
we're going to do that. But Lisa is going to do that. She's going to explain why the ACA is unreformable and why we have to get rid of the ACA. And speaking of the ACA, I shouldn't let today go by without pointing out to you that there is a new development. Let me get the development on the screen. Let's see, what is this? Edit post. We don't want to edit post. I can probably get this. Yeah, this is it. This is the new website of KRTD Media.
Oh, yay.
And specifically, well, here's the homepage here. I guess it looks pretty much the same. I wonder why that's on the homepage. Okay, anyway, the blog is in place. There's a blog in place here. Okay. There's a current list of shows, and you can view our show schedule as well. Click on something, view our show schedule. But of course, the blog got started today, and I put up 5 posts. The first post is called the top post. It wasn't the first post. It was the 5th post that was posted. But it's called the Affordable Care Act, a magic legacy moment for Obama or an albatross around the neck of Democrats and progressives. And you can see the albatross is still there. And the way you tell that is to look at what's happening with CMMI and Liz Fowler and direct contracting entities now. Those are only possible because of the way the ACA was written. And there's a second post saying the value of the right ratio is 0. In other words, everybody's always talking about the debt to GDP ratio as a valid measure of fiscal sustainability. But no, the real valid measure of fiscal sustainability is financial incapability or incapacity. And I outline what that ratio is and why, for monetary sovereigns, it always has a 0 value. So then there were 3 other posts there that I'll briefly advertise. There's a very brief post giving what I consider to be the best answer.
Hey, Joe, share your screen so people can see it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for reminding me. I forgot to share my screen. Of course, I did mean to share my screen. because that was really the whole point of it, sharing my screen. So I screwed up the whole point.
Go back to the top so people can see what it looks like.
So thank you, Lisa,
Mm-hmm.
for keeping me on point. There's the blog right there. Okay. So let me share that so you can see it now. Let me go back up to the top, though. Scroll it up for you so that you can see what it looks like.
There it is.
Okay, there it is. And the Dump the Incumbent show is featured on the top. In the KRTD blog, the most recent blog comes first. So that was the Affordable Care Act blog. And the value of the right ratio was the fourth blog that was posted. Then there were 3 related blogs, and to read them off in the right way, how will you pay for it? A very short blog on the best answer to the question which is posed in the title. And the best answer, as I think many of you know, is overt congressional financing. Then there's a second blog, also short, on will overt congressional financing cause more inflation? Then the covert congressional financing method, which is used right now. And then the final blog that was posted here today was, isn't overt congressional financing in conflict with the current PAYGO system in the House? And yes, it is. And I say why that's the case in a very short blog. But there's something else that's featured in that particular blog. That is a link to a video that came out of the MMT conference in 2017. It's a talk by Justin Santopietro, and he did a study of the projection accuracy of CBO. And this particular video, I highly recommend it. It is a riot. It is really funny. He makes CBO look so silly. It just,
We need to post that out on Twitter.
okay.
I would love to do that. That would be hysterical.
Washington, D.C. So I try to apply some of those concepts to the presentation you're about to see.
Okay, so that's the link to it anyway. When we get off here, we can post that up to Twitter and remind people about that hilarious video. That is very worthwhile. So anyway, that's the new website for KRTD Media. There will be other bloggers on there soon. I think we have at least 6 bloggers that are intending to write some for it. I know that Lisa is planning on blogging very soon. And I think Johnny Axum is going to be blogging very soon too, and Sherry Wise. So there's going to be a lot of activity on the blog there. And that's going to be of great interest. In addition to all the new KRTD shows that are coming up very, very soon. So this is, I guess, kind of an extended advertisement for KRTD Media. I hope everybody is interested in that. I certainly am.
I am. I can't wait to see these new shows. I need like 3 of me to be able to enjoy all this stuff and get all the work done that I've put myself in the middle of.
But Sam Hollenbeck is going to be having a show soon.
Oh, cool.
And that's going to be really good, I think. It's going to be really a humanistic show.
So I guess the good news in all of this is that I think we're building a real groundwork infrastructure for through the states and working with the states, not just from a legislative standpoint, which definitely are offshoots of, but even the Red Berets now putting, uh, establishing state presence so that we can get a ground game going. And not only that,
Specifically, state chapters.
state chapters.
In other words, there's a chapter in Pennsylvania now that was started actually by Lisa. There's a chapter, in New York. Is there a chapter in Massachusetts yet?
Yep. Yes, there is. That's Louise or Doris. Or is it Doris? Is that her name? And I never remember her real name, but she goes by Lumpy Louise on Twitter. She did the MA chapter. But you have to remember, there's lots of people that we know that are associated in Massachusetts that, we can work. We've worked with them before in certain capacities. This is all about just bringing people together under the same umbrella, doing the same kinds of things that the Red Berets are doing. And the idea here is that when one state is in a situation, say like New York finally gets Hunkala, is that how you say her last name? The governor of New York now?
Kathy Hochul.
Hochul. If we can put
Kathy Hochul.
if we can put pressure on her, right? Because that legislation has passed through the state legislature several times now. So really, it's a matter of getting the governor on board, right? So Scott was on a call with her. It was a PR call where all the questions were predetermined. So when he put his question in the chat about supporting the New York Health Act, it sent the chat into a state of silence for 5 minutes, and then it blew up with people asking questions about whether or not she was going to support the act. And then immediately a bunch of trolls came in arguments. They ended up shutting the chat down. And then they said, if you have a problem with how we selected the questions, please attend our next call next week, right? This is what we got to do, guys. It's about discourse. It's about getting in on the inside of these things and putting pressure on everyone. So if you want to follow the Red Berets, Fran just posted on Facebook. It's Janet. That's right, Janet. Janet is at Red Berets MA. That's the Massachusetts chapter. We've got Vancouver, Washington's got one. It's Van Red Berets. We got Tennessee to come on yesterday. It's Red Berets.
There's a California chapter also.
Couple. There's San Francisco and there's Cal Red Berets.
Yep.
So, if you're interested and you're in a state or a city.
Also, Florida Red Berets.
Florida, that's Fran.
Started by Fran Bauer, who's here tonight.
Mm-hmm. And so the idea, folks, is that not only are we planting ourselves in states, but we also come together to support each other because it's going to take all of us, right? This is an effort. There are, CalCare just had that resolution that we were all clapping about in Sacramento, passing that resolution that they support state-based CalCare and Medicare for all. Those are the things that we work together for. When we protest, if some of us can get to a city to come and protest with you or do a demonstration, that's the whole idea, that we need to be everywhere and we need to be mobile. And that doesn't mean that everybody has to run and jump and do these things. But if there's a bunch of us, then some of us can always do that. That's what this is about.
Okay, so 2 points. So Ghost Start says, I saw something on Twitter about only needing 400,000 people to pass Medicare for all in all 50 states. I think you've got that a little bit confused. The 400,000 people and the number of signatures that are needed on a ballot initiative in Washington state to get the single payer ballot initiative onto the ballot, in Washington. And 400,000 people are being pursued through a signature campaign that's being run by Andre Stackhouse. And there's a new video he put out just yesterday about how that signature campaign is going to be organized. And if you look at the video, and you listen closely, you'll see that he has a wonderful plan for getting the 400,000 signatures. And speaking of Andre, he has also started a mass movement before Medicare for All organization. And we're basically looking for people to join that. And one of the big things that organization, is going to do is going to spread knowledge about how to organize the ground games in all of the single payer states. And I think that's going to be done, in alliance with the Red Beret chapters in those states as well. At least I see that happening.
Many prongs make a very strong wheel, right? Many
Right.
spokes in the wheel.
It's very exciting. I mean, I feel very excited about all the things that are going on now in relation to spreading the Red Berets out. It won't be long before we have a truly national movement with strength based in many, many states.
And there's lots to this. There's a ground game. What Andre's got is a field operation. And we're looking for signature captains. Now everybody can't drop everything and go to the state and, spend their time there gathering signatures, but I'm going to do it, and I'll be going sometime in the spring. I'll go out there with Laura and try to gather 500 signatures, being responsible for that. But if you're in Washington or you can get away sometime, I think that the window opens May 1st and it runs through December 19th of next year for signature gathering. Keep your fingers crossed that we're not in another pandemic nightmare. That's the plan. And I actually have, if you follow me on Twitter, I'm at 50 lines only. I think most everybody here knows who I am. I will post the QR code that'll take you in if you're interested in being a signature captain or you just want to watch the video and do an intake and see what it's all about, even if you can't get out there to be a signature captain. Knowing how we're doing this is important because when it gets to your state, you're going to need the same kinds of things. Even if you
absolutely. In the case of Washington, Andre is trying to put together 800 signature captains.
Yes, 800 of them because you need 500 signatures each. But I just wanted to say that even if your state can't do a ballot initiative, you still want to know what this looks like because when you got a socialize, here's part of the problem with New York State. They've got all this legislation. They got it through the legislature several times, but there's no penetration into the communities, into the general population. Not very many people are aware of it. That's what you call a ground game. How do you socialize this stuff? That's what whole Washington's got a ground game because they went at it from bypassing the legislature because they could do a ballot initiative. And this isn't their first attempt, right? So these are all really good things to know about so that when it comes time, if it comes to your state, you know who these people are so that you can pull them in because they're all Red Berets and we're all willing to help every state that wants to do this. Joe and I will look at your legislation. If we can get enough money to get Jerry Friedman to review it, like I said, that standardization is critical. The people that know how to put this legislation together, they can look at it and say, you know what, you've got underwriting in here, not something that you want to go with, right? Because you open up that window for the insurance industry and they will
go right through. They'll take it all.
Yes, they will. Yes, they will. And if you don't run enough surplus, you are running into a situation where it won't work. You've got to have enough surplus to make it work because there's a lot of work that needs to be done to rebuild not only the infrastructure from a provider standpoint, but to attract talent if you need to socialize it, to work with your state agencies to rebuild that public health. Once we get that together and all that funding is already usurping the for-profit health insurance underwriting, Then you can throw the switch nationally and make it happen. It doesn't have to happen in 50 states. It doesn't have to happen in 20 states. I'm a big believer that if we can get 6, we would have enough pressure, because the word's going to get around that people don't have to be tied to their employers. They don't have to be paying 20% of their income. They don't have to be going bankrupt. We don't have people that are on the streets that don't have health care. It solves so many problems. They would put so much more money in the hands directly of the people that we might actually have to worry about inflation, a real inflation indicator. But that's not the point. The point here is this can be done. It can be done. It can cover everybody, real coverage. People can go to their doctors. We can rebuild this public health infrastructure and get us out of this crazy pandemic crap. There, I preached my preach.
Good preach. Good preach, Lisa. Love that preach. And by the way, if we get Washington and New York, okay, and California, even those 3 states may be enough to start a real rush in many other states. And then pressure on senators from states that don't have anything like this to get a national program, so their people have single payer too.
Kay is saying that they have something called SPAN, but no action in Ohio. Kay, is that a single player plan? Is that what SPAN is in Ohio?
Yes, it is.
Oh, we got to get your legislation. We got to look and see if there's been an analysis on it. We got to talk.
Yeah, and we got to see if we can make some contact with the SPAN people and get them into the mass movement for Medicare for All.
Mm-hmm.
Because that would be the way to activate them and to get them to start to develop a ground game in Ohio, which would give you that action, okay, in Ohio. And Robert Copland says a lot of people have to use GoFundMe just to pay their health care bills. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we're all for Medicare for All here. I mean, that's a travesty that people have to use GoFundMe just to pay their health care bills.
Okay, so Kay's saying yes, it is. All right, cool. I didn't know Ohio had one, but you know what? They're probably playing the same games they're playing in every other state with this stuff. They bury it. It loses traction. It sits there. Oh, we've got a Republican legislature. We're not even going to bother trying to introduce the bill. Well, isn't that the point of having a single payer organization with legislation? Doesn't matter if you're all Republican. Part of the problem, I'm telling you, any Republican governor would, especially if they want more power to the states, should love this idea. Love it. And I am a firm believer that we've got to get a Republican state into this coalition, because right now, a lot of what we've got are great plans, but we're all blue. We need some red. We need to show people in those states that this can be done. We also have to work on efforts to try and do Medicaid expansion in those states in the South that don't have it, because we need those federal dollars in there to make these plans work.
So speaking of red states, what's wrong with Utah?
I don't know that anything is wrong with Utah. We'll have to talk to Joe about that. I'm not sure what's going on there.
We have to talk to Dr. Joe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not me, the other Dr. Joe.
Yes, the other Dr. Joe. I was on the phone call with him, but you know what? I haven't. I don't know. I don't know what it is. They must have some committee where they're burying. If they've got a bill, they're burying it. But I don't know.
And Lana says in Minnesota, they have presented the bill, and the House is Democratic, but the state Senate is R, and our Senate blocks any hearing. So, Lana, can we get a copy of the bill to see it?
Yeah, we need the legislation. We need to find out the site, which should have the legislation posted.
Yeah, we need a link to the bill. And Kay says Single Payer Action Network. Single Payer Action Network could be only nationally oriented, but we have to find that out.
And we have to be careful about some of these top-down national single-payer places because a lot of them are getting co-opted and they are pushing to, we've got to do something about the privatization of Medicare, which is code for let's amend the ACA. Don't fall for that. It's crap. You cannot amend the ACA. You can't.
Yeah, I mean, but just consider Bernie Sanders' current effort. He'd like to reduce the eligibility age, okay, for Medicare from 65 to 60, right? You know, you've all heard about that. He's been trying for months to get a vote on that.
Which was phase 1 or phase 2, I can't remember, of the implementation of Medicare for All, by the way. Go ahead.
Right. Okay, but if he does that, and he's successful, and in the background, Liz Fowler is successful with the DCE program, then what has Bernie got?
Nothing.
Got nothing.
That's why I'm saying you can't.
Nothing. He's got Medicare expanded just in time for the privatization program having great momentum to privatize the whole of Medicare. All happening administratively behind his back without his evidently knowing any damn thing about it.
No, he does, Joe, but the Congress can't do anything about it because the way they put this together, they don't have to go through the legislature. They don't. They are free reign to fuck this up. Excuse me, but that's what they're doing. They're killing people, and they knew this was going to happen, and they did it anyway.
And they knew they were going to kill people, and they did it anyway. Yeah, and that's the important thing for us to realize. They don't care if they kill us, if they make a buck. That's what we got to come to terms with. That's what we got to beat. And Robert Copeland says CalCare has to get out of the California Assembly by the end of January or it's dead along with other 2-year bills.
Yeah, well, they'll reintroduce when they start the legislature over again.
Well, he says by the end of January.
Why would it have to come out by? I mean, because when you start over, it's a 2-year cycle, or is it different in California?
It's a 2-year cycle, but most probably what's going on there in California, okay, is that if something doesn't get immediately passed in the assembly, but right at the start, okay, of a new session, it has very little chance of later getting through the assembly and getting up to the Senate in time to pass it in any 2-year cycle. It's probably something like that.
Well, I can tell you this, Joe. At any given point in time, if there is enough public pressure, if there are enough people in the streets banging pots and pans and putting wheat paste posters on everything they can touch that says pass the damn bill, you'll rattle some cages. But until we get to that point, we're going to keep doing this.
Yes, that's right. Keep complaining about it and not having any impact on anybody who has any influence.
Exactly. You can make a lot of wheat paste and you take some paper and you go at your politicians in every public square, out in any public area, out of front of their offices, and you just paste that stuff up. We need you behind this bill. That's what we do.
We need you behind this bill, and we also need you behind, but dump the incumbents as well, because if you can dump a large number of incumbents, you'll have a lot better chance when you do the street level actions to get the new people to listen to the street level actions, because they will have seen you dump a bunch of incumbents before, and they will know that they might be in the same boat if they don't listen. So that is both of our messages at the same time, and that's probably a very good way to end the program.
I think it is too. And just by the way, Robert, just so you know, in Pennsylvania, in order for a bill to become law, it has to go through 2 full sessions of the legislature. So we can pass it once Then we have to wait till the next session, and we got to pass it again before it actually becomes law. So don't feel bad, kiddo.
So that's what happens in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, it's got to go through twice.
How come it's got to go through twice? Is that due to the internal rules of the legislature?
I don't know if it's the rules or if it's the Constitution, but that's what has to happen here. It's ridiculous.
It would be important to know if it's in the Constitution or if it's just the rules of the legislature.
I don't know. And you know what? It is so like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs here. I've given up. That's why I do this. I'm not kidding. It's true. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Come to Pennsylvania.
Yes, I haven't heard that for a very long time.
Yeah, well, you just don't live here. I moved from Washington. I moved from Washington State, came back to Pennsylvania, and I was like, "Oh my God, I just went back in time 35 years." It was horrible. It's horrible. It was like, "Oh my God, I forgot," because this is my home state, right? And I lived in Washington State for 19 years. I got used to caucusing and, you know, you mail in your ballots and nobody ever has to worry. They show up in the mail, you know, and you go in a caucus and you elect your delegates, and everybody who caucuses is like, it's a state full of activists, right?
Yeah, each other.
And you battle at your caucuses. You start in, you know, the gym in your local sector, and then you move on up through the ranks. And that kind of discourse is a beautiful thing. When you know what you're talking about, you can convince a lot of people and become the delegate in your district real quick, and then you move on. It's a good place to be involved in politics. And what did they do? They pulled the caucus structure out of Washington State. After 2016, when Bernie won the state, they killed it. So anyhow, blah blah blah.
Amazing. That's amazing.
Okay, now it's a good place to end, Joe, because if I start talking again, I won't shut up.
Okay, well, remember, on Thursday, there's going to be a lot more talking about this.
Yes, there is. I got a lot of studying to do. I got to get my names and my facts written down so that I'm not tripping over things. I wouldn't want to call Ms. Fowler something other than Ms. Fowler, so.
Maybe you should call her Mistress Fowler.
I don't know. I don't know what I want to call. I'm just going to have to be nice. I'm going to have to bite my tongue.
I know. I'd have to bite my tongue, too.
Maybe we can invite Connor Lamb and beat the crap out of him. All right. Now it's time to go.
Okay. Good night, Lisa.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for being here. Oh, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe.
Share and subscribe.
Yep.
All three.
And Dump the Incumbents is on Wednesday, tomorrow.
All right. And also buy me a coffee. Wait, I got to do something before I leave. I have to display my banner. I forgot to do that today. Boy, I am such a lousy marketer. Okay, you wouldn't believe it. Anyway, there it is, going on the bottom of your screen. Please remember my buy me a coffee link at https://www.buymeacoffee.com/Joe Firestone. I don't think there's a dot there. It's just Joe Firestone.
Oh, well, Joe, you're going to have to fix that, because if there's no dot, then people aren't going to get there. You know what? You should put that link in the chat every time we start.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I should put that link every time we start.
And
start displaying the banner every time we start.
Are you at this Are you at enough followers, subscribers now that you could put this underneath every description of your YouTube?
I don't know. How many subscribers do I need to be able to put this under?
I don't know, but you know who's going to know? Jimmy. So when you have Dump the Incumbents, you talk to Jimmy about it beforehand, or, not on the show, but you need to talk to Jimmy. She knows how to make all that work.
I will talk to Jimmy.
Okay. All right.
I'm in close touch with Jimmy these days.
I bet. Bye, everybody.
Okay, good night.
Bye. Joy, it's 30 degrees.
Now,
Wind is 1 to 2.
I kind of woke up.
No, I'm gonna take you to bed.
You'll have to wait for the morning because I haven't taken the pill.
That's all right. I'm just talking about taking you to bed to go to bed earlier. That's all.
Okay, so that's right. So it's 11:06. We're going to be in bed by 12 o'clock.
Okay, I'm gonna get it's gonna go up to 50 when you get to 7 in the morning. The rest of the night is in the 30s.
If it's 50 by 7 in the morning, what is the what is going to be the temperature tomorrow?
Oh,
Because 50 by 7 in the morning suggests it's going to be a warm day.
oh no. It's not. It says noon 50 degrees now.
Oh, noon 50 degrees, not,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's not that warm then. It means it'll probably be 50, 55, 60, but not warmer than that. Let me see.
Here. This is an hourly, and you can see.
Early. It's going up to 53 evidently. Temperature. I don't know what the real feel is going to be like, but 53, high of 53. That's a pretty nice day. That's not going to be too bad as long as the wind is pretty good.
Okay.
Boy, wasn't that a good stream?
It was very, very interesting. Very good.
It
Yeah.
was really fabulous. Yeah, you know what
She's
Lisa
very smart.
is really good at?
What?
She's really good at ad-libbing.
Yeah.
You know, just real conversation. And she meshes with me very well. So I think together we put on a real good show. I really do. I'm very pleased with the show that we've put on.
Is Ramona tomorrow?
Yeah, Ramona tomorrow. We have to decide on the title for the show. So, was the chocolate good?
Yeah. Oh, it's great.
It was, wasn't it?
All right. You want some crackers or not?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
Crackers and olives would be nice.
Okay.
Oh, Lana is already tweeting at me.
Really? Okay.
Oh, Lana tells me I'm still live. Okay. Yeah, we're still live, honey.
It's trying to get you to go early.
Oh, good. I'm going to end the
You
stream
better
now.
explain that we're night people and going to bed, changing our